Katherine, thank you so much for joining us on the Rising Beyond podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so as I am working with survivors of abuse, either in a counseling setting or in the community setting, we very often lead into or jump into things that they have learned from their family of origin and their relationship with caregivers. And sometimes it's a huge, you know,
Mm.
aha moment of like, oh my gosh, this is why this tells me so much. And so many of my listeners and the women I work with are people pleasers and they fawn. And
Mm.
so you, I assume, talk a ton
Mm.
about that with the good daughter complex or the good
Mhm.
daughter. Is that, I don't know if that's exactly what you call
Good
it.
daughter
Um,
syndrome, but
Good daughter
yes, it is
syndrome. So
complex. Yeah.
yeah, share a little
Mhm.
bit about kind of what that looks like.
Okay. I'll kind of start off with the definition. So if you have a sensitive, attuned daughter who's raised by a mother who's difficult, she could be narcissistic, borderline, or addicted, frankly, or just a difficult personality. Children, because they are biologically programmed to ensure their survival by bonding with their caregiver, many times it's the mom, they adapt and adjust to mom's impairments, or like I pretty much define difficult as chronically insecure, frequently dysregulated. So you have the mom who's less well put together. And so an attuned daughter reads that and she adapts to that and ends up doing more of the relational work.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know that consciously. And frankly, neither does her mother in the beginning.
Yeah.
So those tracks get laid down in early childhood. We're finding out more and more from neuroscience how prevalent this is. So when she enters adulthood, she can't be okay unless mom's okay and okay with her. She's frequently working to please a mother who can never be pleased,
Mm-hmm.
or to individuate, to break away and have her own life. And mom's clingy and needy and intrusive and critical and won't let her go for various complicated psychological reasons. So, what you get is an adult daughter who has at the center of her emotional life her mother. Frequently, what happens is this relationship template she doesn't know that she has. She doesn't know she's been doing more of the relational work. She doesn't know it's unbalanced. And then she's going to feel at home, be attracted to, be compelled to make it work with somebody who is equally emotionally immature or easily dysregulated, or she's got to walk on eggshells around. And it's just like an accent. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know you have one until somebody says, well, you have a Southern accent. And I say, no, I don't. I just
Mm-hmm.
talk. But if I
Yeah.
go up north and I hear somebody with a New York accent, implicit, as
Yeah.
your listeners know. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Lots of complications and variations on that theme. So some daughters can be a product of just intergenerational wounding around, say, one issue.
Mm-hmm.
And others could have a chronically personality disordered mom that they've adapted and adjusted people pleasing, codependency, enmeshment for their whole lives. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just mom. That's just how mom is. That's what they'll
Yeah.
come into therapy saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like when it's like, oh, that's just how it is. It's like, well, let's look at how that is because comfortable doesn't always mean healthy.
Right, right. And they're frequently exhausted. They're frequently not comfortable, but they can't see any other choice. It's like, well, doesn't everybody's mother criticize them, give them unwanted advice, intrude themselves into relationships? They're just, that's just being a mom. That's just because she loves me. That's because she knows what's best for me.
Mm-hmm.
She's just trying to make me better. She's just proud when I do well and disappointed when I don't do well. What
Yeah.
they say, fish don't know nothing about water. A good daughter
right?
doesn't know anything about her adaptations, and makes me know on some level, "Okay, I'm a people pleaser. I really walk on eggshells," and that discomfort usually brings them into therapy, but to know the whole picture is a different kettle of fish, if we're going with the fish analogy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like if someone comes in, very often people don't come to, well, now they come to see me
Yeah,
because they know what I do,
yeah.
right? I have experienced, coercive control and domestic violence in my relationship. And now I'm co parenting. I have to co parent with him. So now that people know a little bit more
Mm,
about what I do, that's why they choose to see me. But what we see before I was, people knew a little bit more about what I did. And when people are coming in to see maybe some of my other therapists that I have at my practice, maybe they're coming in for anxiety that's impacting they feel like their
mm,
anxiety is impacting the relationship or something like that. And then we really dig and it's like, well, of course you're anxious because you are in an abusive, coercively controlling
mm,
relationship.
mhm,
Because
mm.
if it's not the physical abuse or the sexual abuse,
Yeah,
people don't always recognize it as
yeah.
abusive. And so similar is when they're coming in and
Interesting.
we're digging into their intimate partner relationship and we look at patterns from, their childhood, their families of origin, they start to see it, right? They have these, big
Mm,
moments of like,
mm,
oh
mm,
my goodness, like my ex is like my parent or my caregiver. And so, yeah, it is. It's because it is just ingrained. They've been
mhm,
conditioned that this is
mhm,
what you
mhm,
do.
mm.
It is harder to see it until you start to see it.
Mhm, mhm. It's so baked in, it's so habitual, and then and underneath that, if they're trying to be good enough for a parent who can't ever be pleased because a narcissistic mother needs to be right, she needs to defeat you, she needs all these things to fill up her cup, right, to get
Hmm.
her supply. Daughter has a deficit. She doesn't, she has low self-esteem. She doesn't know what it's like to be appreciated for just being her. So why wouldn't she gravitate to a relationship that requires the same thing?
When you're working with these daughters, do you notice kind of a lack of sense of self, like true self and identity?
Oh, that's a really good
Because
question.
what you're talking
Yeah.
about is really similar to a
Yeah.
narcissistic partner, and that's what's like stripped away.
Yeah.
But if you have not been able to create your sense of self or identity because it is solely based on being okay in this caregiver relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's something that you see show up a lot.
All the time. I
Yeah.
would say even a chronic sense of emptiness when really get down to it. And sometimes maybe put some boundaries up and somebody's able to sustain them. They'll tell me, I can't be alone.
Mhm.
I have this empty feeling. I don't know who I am. People say, Where do you want to go to eat?" And I can't answer.
Mhm.
I don't know how to decorate my home because I don't know what I like,
Yeah.
because they've been so externally oriented for so long and have had somebody who needs supply from them. And it's, I'm sure, as you know, lots of narcissists can be charismatic. They can take up all the oxygen in the room. So there's like literally no emotional space for a developing child to differentiate, to challenge without being put down or told that they're
Mhm.
bad or wrong. That's another feeling that I hear a lot. I just feel so guilty. I feel like a bad person
Yeah.
when I, don't give this other person what they're requiring from me, instead
Yeah.
of this person's requiring too much and what they're requiring is unreasonable. They say, I just don't have enough. I guess I'm just not a very strong personality. I guess there's just not much to me, which
Mhm.
is a horrible way to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I'm also thinking of a lot of my mamas are told they're like too much, like you're too much. But then what's interesting is I wonder if there is if they see their parent as, like, other people around their mom is, like, they're too much. So their mom does not have relationships, strong, healthy relationships,
Yeah.
and so the daughter, and this could be men as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
sons also experience narcissism, but again, my audience is mostly women. I
Right.
assume your audience and
Yeah,
the people
mostly
you work with
women.
are mostly
Yeah.
women, so that's kinda where we're
Yeah.
going, women. But
Mhm.
my I could get the sense of they see that, and so they're their mom's only person, and so that loyalty is
Totally.
huge.
Yes. People will say, "She uses me as her therapist. She talks on the phone without taking a breath. I can put the phone down and she won't notice that I'm
Mhm.
not even listening." Yeah, I do see that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's kind of like when I'm talking, when someone comes to me and they don't understand, like, they're in that space where
Yeah,
they think it might just be their fault,
maybe just
they're not
Mhm.
enough, and we're looking, or sometimes I have people that are like, "I wanna do therapy with you because I just wanna see if my
Mhm.
partner's a narcissist.
Mhm.
I need you
Mhm.
to tell me if they are,"
Ah,
which is not the point of therapy, however, but
right.
it shows up a lot. And so one of the questions I ask is, does your partner have good friends? And we kind of define what good friends are.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what we find is like, no, that
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
people that have high levels of narcissism do
Mhm.
not have close, unconditional, long term
Yeah.
friendships.
Yeah. They have fans many times, but and the other kind of familial template I'll see is that dad is passive and enabler if he's still around.
Mhm.
Many times the brother might be the golden child that mom says is wonderful and he can doesn't matter how much he screws up, he can do no wrong.
Yeah.
Your clients probably are married to some of those to
Mhm.
bring it
Yep.
full circle. And so when the good daughter starts to put any sort of limitations on what she's willing to give, the whole family system is disrupted. And dad says, "Don't upset your mother. What do you want to make my life hell?" The golden
Yeah.
child brother is what you're always taking care of mom. You know, you bought the gifts, you showed up for every holiday, you listened to her endlessly on the phone. You know, I don't want a target on my back. Don't rock my boat. So
Yeah.
this whole family system that has evolved around this one narcissist is very hard to shake up. As we know, systems are harder to change than individuals. And when you start to make that little change, the whole system gets into uproar. And the good daughter is doing so much of the relational work, really for everybody, taking
Yeah.
so much of the heat that nobody, extended family, nobody wants to have their boat rocked if they're benefiting from the daughter who's doing so much of the work.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because they are benefiting, like, so many people are benefiting when you don't have strong boundaries, when you're always agreeable, when you have loyalty without noticing how it's impacting you,
Yeah,
all
no
of those things.
requirements.
And so a lot of my clients, when they start to heal and they're doing well, they can feel their family members, even their friends, pulling them back into the roles that they've always played. And so it does sometimes, like, get worse before it gets better, and unfortunately, sometimes
Mhm.
it doesn't get better from that external,
Yeah, yeah,
that systems perspective.
yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, how do you help people when they're experiencing those challenges? Like, they
Mhm,
see it,
mhm,
they
mhm,
want something different in their life, but then they are
mhm,
getting that pull to go
mhm,
back to
mhm.
how things always were.
I think that's where education and really getting solid within yourself, anticipating the pushback. It's going to be the more it's needed, the more the pushback. So it's kind of it's diametrically opposed. It's just it's
Mhm.
phenomenal. But if you're anticipating that, I mean, having said that, nobody can prepare you, as I'm sure in your work, nobody can prepare you once you start to set limits or requirements with the kind of pushback and uproar you're going to get. However, so like we've talked about these depleted, like people don't know who they are. I even have people go through exercises, go around your home and say, me, not me. Put a red dot on something that's not me. Because good daughters frequently will say, I've inherited, my mother's picked out all my furniture. The
Yep.
wedding was my mother's social statement, not mine. My house, my clothing is what my mother's picked out for me or approves of. So you can do things like look around your house and even do the exercise. What's me? What's not me? How much am I basing my sense of self on somebody else? And this could be a year's worth of work or longer. I mean,
Yeah.
it's ongoing, but it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg is the behavior that you see, but underneath it, all the work to, I mean, all the stages, the anger, first the exhaustion, then the anger, and then the grief
Mhm.
that what you thought you had. I know you work with this. What you thought you
Yeah.
had, you don't, in fact, have. And that's,
Yeah.
oh, brings on just cascading. So if you don't have what you think you have in your husband, and then maybe you've normalized your relationship with a parent from early childhood. I mean, this is a huge identity shift
Yeah.
and change, which has to happen internally, has nothing to do, you have to stop the negative and the destructive behavior for sure. But so much of the work is internal. I think people, don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always really heartbreaking. So I work with kids as well, and so when I'm working with littles, we don't do this work because it's not appropriate, but it is always hard when I'm working with a teen and they are experiencing a parent with a personality disorder, very often either narcissism or the borderline traits, because I mean, there's trauma throughout the family, generational trauma and things. And when we get to the point of me having to tell a 15 or 16-year-old kiddo,
Mhm, mhm.
hey, I'm actually not sure that your parent is going to change.
Yeah.
So it's my job to make sure that you're okay, no matter if your parent changes or not, because they are also, I don't just bring this up willy nilly, like they're in that
Yeah.
same place of like, we've tried, we've tried, we've tried. I'm not good enough. I'm not. And then they're seeing like, oh gosh, it's actually my
Mhm.
parent is not willing to change. And the sad language is, I'm not worth it enough
Yeah. Yeah.
for them to do the work
Mhm.
to change, right? There is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
internal, I'm not. And so we kind of try to shift that language of what if they're incapable of, and
Mhm.
you're not the problem. It wouldn't even matter if it's you or Joe Schmo walking down the street, that they're not capable. And then how can you be okay? And so it is heartbreaking when I'm working with these kids, but then it's really empowering because we get to talk about their fawning behavior and give them some discernment of,
Mm.
okay, so I know I do have to, like, I'm still living at home
Mhm.
and my
Mhm. Mhm.
college career and the
Mhm.
finances for college
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
dependent on me acting like the good daughter, right?
Mhm.
Like we just put
Mhm.
it out there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
this is reality acceptance, radical
and they
acceptance of
get
the
to
what is.
choose.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to continue fawning, but it's very
Uh-huh.
intentional, right? It
Uh-huh.
switches from that
Conscious. Yeah.
subconscious, I'm doing this, like this nervous system response to
Yeah.
intention
Yeah. Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they can then make decisions of like, I will set boundaries here with these people. Over here, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And that seems to be kind of some of the first steps that I see, like when again, when I'm working with younger, when you're working with older, like
Mhm.
adults, there is a different level of grief
Mhm. Mhm.
that it's like, "Oh my gosh, my whole life has been."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But what a service you're doing to both understand where they're coming from, not to suppose that they could just tell off a narcissistic parent and still have everything go well,
Yeah.
but to break that cycle in awareness. And I mean, we know from Dan Siegel's work, there've been some
Mhm.
Stroof, that the difference is when we realize and we can reflect on, when we understand what happened to us and we haven't normalized it and made it just an unconscious program that our
Yeah. Yeah.
attachments are going to be
So
healthier
I feel
going
so
forward.
lucky to get to work with these younger, with younger
Yeah,
kids and
yeah,
teens because I
yeah.
can do some of that. But that is so many of my mamas are like, oh my gosh, I see them placating. I see my child placating at dad's house. They're fawning all the time. They're people pleasing. How do we stop that behavior? And sometimes the answer is to not stop that behavior because it keeps them safe.
Free, conscious. Yeah,
Mhm.
the
It
good old
keeps them
fashioned.
safe.
Yeah, yeah, totally understand. Good, yeah, good for you.
Yeah, so when we get into kind of
Ah,
those discussions, there's a lot of, I don't know, like controversy almost around,
mhm.
well, if your parent is a narcissist, if your parent is like this,
Right.
you need to go no
Yeah,
contact. Let's
yeah.
cut it off.
Yeah.
What
Cut them
think
off.
about that? We have lots of different thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of different thoughts.
So much.
I I think because we boomers became so involved with our kids, sometimes it's just they're so enmeshed, they don't know anything other than to say, "Ah, you're a narcissist. I'm gonna cut you off." As an act of individuation, which is, of course, like a teenager, I hate you. Now, can you drive me to the
Yeah.
mall?
Yep.
So, what I like to say and even suggest is to set very small boundary, something that you could see yourself doing instead of the I've just read an article, you're a narcissist, go fix yourself, or I'm going to go no contact.
Yes.
Mom, I see that. And I have been guilty of that. See, when I first started this work 35 years ago, there was no such thing as boundaries. That mean that word didn't exist in the vernacular, in the
Yeah. Yeah.
psychological vernacular. So anyway. So yeah, I see that. So I'm plead with my PhD psychologist mother, debate champion mother, endless back and forth emails, entire weekends were spent debating this. And
Yes.
so I spent, ooh, I would say years making all the mistakes and having to kind of figure it out without the
Yeah.
benefit. Really, I mean, I was in psychotherapy. I was doing a lot of reading and mentorship, but this was not really a thing.
Yeah.
So, so I know I'm going kind of circuitous route, but I feel like I've made all the mistakes. So trying to beg, keep mom in the superior position. And so if you can argue and explain yourself and make her understand, she will change.
Yeah.
And she won't. So you can exhaust yourself and end up feeling like when you come into therapy, well, yeah, that sounds great for somebody else's mom, but you don't know my mom. It's not worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So the reason for the small boundary, expect the pushback and reframe it as data gathering.
Mhm.
So the more it's needed, the more pushback you're going to get. Also, if you have a semi reasonable mom, you could give her a chance. If you wonder, is it just me? So you set that reasonable boundary. Let's say it's weight. Mom always brings up your weight when you visit. And you say, Mom, it's really uncomfortable for me when you talk about my weight. Can you please not do that?
Mhm.
Call that a relational boundary. Then if she does it again, you can say, Mom, we've talked about this. My weight is off limits. I'm not going to want to spend as much time with you.
Mhm.
So she keeps on doing it. Then you say, Mom, I've asked you not to do it. You persist in doing it. I'm going to leave. And
Yeah.
this is all in the context of one visit. So, but you get to trial those things out. You get to understand her resistance, and then you run into your own resistance, which can be huge.
Yeah.
Do you need mom to be right? Do you need to feel like mom's not competitive with you? She just wants the best for you. Nobody will tell you but your mother. All these things. So to reframe that, to look at that as data gathering, and then hopefully you're working with a therapist and you go back and you can sort it through. I would say I did have this one client, just to give you kind of an example of somebody you might go no contact with. So the mom broke the law regularly. She
Mhm.
was drinking and using and still collecting chips at AA. She said, "My mother, like, parks in handicapped parking places. She breaks in line," so the entitlement.
Yeah.
But she was doing this everywhere and throughout development. So this daughter, as we work together, figured out this mom was not gonna change.
Yeah.
So, there are instances where, yeah, the no contact is certainly merited, and I work with people that are no contact and support them fully. But I kind of like the reframe of the relationship that we have is not working for me.
Yeah.
The relationship as it is. Because unlike, well, I guess like husbands are always, if they're fathers of your children, that's never going to change. If that's your mother, there's always another wedding, a baby shower, a funeral. Like you need to know
Mhm.
going in, things are going to come around the bend. And in some ways, you can stay with the mom more sane to have more criteria. I will engage with you if you act kind and respectful.
Mhm.
And then you get to see if they're able to. So I think then eventually, if you do go no contact, or even maybe it's inside of a month, you have worked it out, particularly for the good daughter, you have worked it out within yourself.
Yeah.
It's not possible. I've given it not every chance, not exhaust myself, been a doormat, been rolled over a gazillion times, but intentionally, mindfully
Yeah.
going about it. So
And
what
so
do you,
much of it is that internal okayness with it, right? As opposed to that more external piece of it. There's so much internal work of leaving any relationship that is important to you,
yeah.
even if it is abusive. There's so much internal work there. Specifically, you mentioned before, is that grief and loss. And as you are, especially if you have not successfully set boundaries because you have developed that, kind of yes man, people pleaser way of working in your world, it's going to take time. And so you're going to probably, whether it's your partner that you're leaving or you're making that decision of how to do that, or a family member, you're going to hear from everybody. How could you do that? That's your mother.
You only have
That
one
is,
mother.
she birthed you. Aren't you grateful for X, Y, and Z, all of those things? And then you're going to hear the other side of like, she's horrible and abusive, and I see what she does to you, and you need to completely cut her off.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right?
Pulled between
Yeah.
the
So you're going to have
two
all these
extremes.
spaces. And so the
Yeah.
goal, and I hope your therapist, whoever you're working with out there, is that one of their main, I guess, values is autonomy, because it is your
Mhm,
choice
mhm, mhm,
what you want
mhm,
to
mhm,
do and what you're going to set that relationship up to look like. And so
mhm.
it's like finding that identity piece is important so that you trust your decisions will fit with your value system. And if you don't know your value system, we got to figure that out first.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page about awareness is everything. So you have denial on the one end of the continuum, and then you have just I'm okay with every, or that is denial. I'm okay with everything. She's my mother, whatever she wants to do with me. Or then she frustrates you one time. She says she's not going to keep your kids. Like you're a narcissist, no contact. And very few people I would think do that. But in both instances, you're not aware. You're acting out of unconscious programming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
And
going to bite you in the ass, whether or not it's the next guy
yes.
who comes along or girlfriend who takes advantage of you or boss or
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada without awareness.
Yeah, and doing the work on either is going to help you with
Mm,
the other situation. So if you're working towards leaving an abusive partner and you're like, again, you have those realizations of like, oh my gosh, my parent is just like this, then that work that you're doing to heal from and to leave your partner, you can generalize that and use it as your working towards setting boundaries and doing that with your parent and vice versa. So if one feels more accessible to you because of safety, because of even just that emotional vulnerability and safety. If either one feels safer, if you're doing the work with setting boundaries with family members, that will help you as you work to set boundaries with your co-parent. It will feel more comfortable and vice versa because a lot of the internal work is going to be the same.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I had talked about the pain of it, but both are true, isn't it? The more grief and the more of a seismic, earthquake inside of your identity, the more dividends it will also pay off when you do this work, even if you've normalized what's going on with mom or dad. And you have to realize at the same time, oh, my life partner, the person I've chosen, is also the same template as what I
Yeah.
grew up with. And even to complicate that or to expound on that, sometimes I'll see, or moms will write me, the narcissistic moms will write me and say, you know, my daughter is in a terrible relationship and I feel the need to rescue her. And
Mhm.
what I can see between the lines is this mom has been controlling, and no wonder where the daughter learned it. And so they'll all triangulate, and it'll be, I'll say with the daughter, her successes and her failures are her own. How else is she going to learn from them? If you swoop in and take over, this is just going to solidify her dependence on you. And then she'll get in a cycle to resent her mother and then have the need to act out. Thus the attraction of the bad boy, right?
Mhm.
He's exhibiting all the fun stuff she's been denying herself, or that can happen. I saw that in myself in my early 20s. I was such an angel. What did they do? My daughter does. I was such an angel. But oh boy, was I attracted to the bad boys doing all the stuff I didn't dare to do, but I could do it kind of adjacent and drive my
Right?
mother insane.
Well, and then there's that piece which I know is a fear of so many. And it unfortunately, again, complicate things worse. A personality disordered mother tries to help you get out of this relationship, partly because there's some competition, because
Mm,
now
mm,
this man or this other, partner is like taken over her
stolen you
role.
away. Yeah.
Dang it. But what I've seen sometimes is when the daughter kind of poo-poos the mom, and it's like, "No," right? And it's because of where you're at of like, "No, this is my soulmate. Mom, you're just jealous," because that's what you've been conditioned by your partner to say all these things, right? And then when the daughter actually needs help, because there was that, harm done to the mom,
Mhm.
oftentimes the mama will side with the abuser and that
Oh,
you, daughter,
oh,
are the problem. And so we
that
have a
is
lot of
horrible.
women who are in that position. And that is so heartbreaking, such betrayal. And again, this is not like the first thing that we do in therapy, but I always think of like,
Yeah.
remember the source.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? So if this parent has been harmful to you in all these ways, all the similar ways, like their goalposts were always moving, so you didn't know what was good enough. Like you never knew what was good enough because once you
Yeah.
were doing the thing that made you good enough, the goalpost shifted and it was something different. Right? If they're doing the conditional loves, like their loves
Mhm,
transactional strings
mhm,
attached, right?
mhm.
And they are siding with your ex, if you can remember the source, like, I don't actually trust that this person, even though they're supposed to, because they're my mom,
Yeah.
they're supposed to have my best interest at heart. They are
Mm.
incapable of doing that,
Incapable. I love that word. Yeah, because that
right? They're not
yeah,
capable of having your best interests ahead
yeah,
of their own. And so,
yeah,
even I say this like it's so easy to do, but it's like, so we can't worry about them siding with your ex.
yeah, yeah. And
And that is where I would say when we're looking at cutoff,
yeah.
that would be an area where
Yes.
I would highly consider cutoff
Yeah.
because it's not just harming your emotional self. Like there's safety implications, there's safety
Yeah.
implications for your kids, right? There's so much there
Mhm.
that in my mind, if I again, it's not my choice,
Mhm.
but that's an area where I've seen people feel more comfortable with cutoff. like complete cutoff.
Yes, yes, just to stop the toxicity. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's the thing, it's probably the same with abusers that and these moms, they wanna stay in the fight. And for good daughters, it exhausts them and it's
Yes.
depleting. But and I do see this a lot, like the mom's always fire texting, calling. There's no resonance or an idea that the daughter needs her own space. So just to
Mhm.
stop the fire hose of intrusion so she can have 2 seconds to think for herself.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the danger to the mom is giving you 2
exactly.
seconds to think for yourself. That is threatening.
And what's always a yellow flag or red flag is when the mom attacks a therapist who she's never met. What is
Oh,
that
yes.
therapist putting in your head?
Yes.
Because the projection, I say, is because that's all they know is
Mhm.
somebody controls you. So it's either your husband, he thinks you're being controlled, or your mom, because that's in their playbook. They don't know that anybody could relate to you actually and be a benefit or have your best interests at heart. They can't conceive of it. So why would they think anything but? It's almost comical.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's putting ideas in your head like you're just an
That
empty-headed.
yeah, that you are nothing. Like you are,
Yeah,
like you
have
said,
no
just like this
ability to think.
empty, like something I talk about with narcissistic parents and their younger children. It's the same now, but I don't even remember where I heard this, but I heard this and I was like, oh, like, yep, this is the term. But a narcissistic parent treats their children like complacent objects, right? And so when I've said
Mhm.
those things before, again, because I work with littles, I think of it as like, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10s, these little
Yeah.
kids. But guess what? Just as you were talking, I was like, yep, the adult daughter,
Yep.
they see you as a complacent object
Mhm,
too.
mhm. To appropriate, right? And
Hmm.
that's where they get good daughters are appropriated. You are my right arm, you're my extension or narcissistic
Yes.
extension. When I will my right arm to go up, it goes up. When I expect you to show up the holiday dressed right and your children dressed to the nines and behave perfectly and look good on me, I mean, just for example, there are gazillion examples, or listen to me nonstop on the phone when I'm having a fight with a family member or take my side
Yeah.
or yeah, without acknowledging. Like I said, my clients would say, put the phone down and the mom would just keep on talking because there's no acknowledgement of the other. You're just a receptacle. All the
Yes.
time you're trying to be a self and be valued and be seen and be felt with. And in their mind, you're just a garbage can, just a receptacle
Yeah.
or a shiny
Yeah.
billboard making mom or, I
Yes.
guess,
It's like,
husband
look at
look
the
good.
Christmas photo with me and my grandchildren, my daughter. Right? All of those things as well. Well, I was going to ask you because you gave a few examples of how you work with people. And I know you have a book. And so I want to make sure that we talk about your book a little bit. But yeah, is there any one other thing that someone can do, even on their own? They
Mhm,
listen to this, it resonates. They're like, oh gosh,
mhm,
I think
mhm,
this is my relationship with my
mhm.
caregiver. What would be another something that they could do like this week, like right after listening, that could help get them
Get them
moving
going.
forward?
Yeah. Well, I'll plug my quiz here. If you look up the Good Daughter Syndrome quiz, take that to start the thinking process. So you will find out if you're on this continuum of the good daughter. If there's enough interest and you're like, okay, this really sounds like me. I have a book called The Good Daughter Syndrome. It lays out the traps that good daughters fall into, psychology behind it, and how to escape these traps to reclaim your autonomy. I would say be very, very gentle with yourself. And I think we've talked about it here that it might be slow going and you're
Mhm.
going to feel conflicted. Can't tell you how many people have come into therapy and said, well, my first therapist said my mother was a narcissist, so I quit that therapist.
Mhm.
Because it brings up incredible loyalty struggles within yourself. And if you try to go faster than you're psychologically prepared to go, you can sabotage.
Yeah.
So be gentle with yourself and
Yeah.
learn and see where you fit on the continuum. It is an umbrella. It's kind of an archetypal pattern, but to know where there are patterns, there are also solutions.
Mhm.
You're not alone. Like your wonderful podcast and the wonderful work that you do. It's not the first time you've seen whatever comes through your door, right, or comes into your
Yeah.
membership. You will find other people who have gone along that path or further along, or you'll be able to recognize that you're within certain patterns. And when they're patterns, they're solutions.
Yeah, and I think if you're in that place of mistrust, because when the most important people to you have been the ones causing harm, trust is really hard to build, and that's with yourself and with others. I found that books and other resources like that, like podcasts and things like that, are such an amazing first step
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you get to choose. You are reading it on your own, you're
Hmm.
listening
Hmm.
to it on your own, and then if it resonates enough, then you can do the next step, right? Then you can take the next step. And so I've really seen that psychoeducation through reading
Hmm.
and through listening is just one of the best ways to get started, especially if you're
Hmm.
nervous to get started.
Hmm. Hmm.
It seems like one of the best options. So, Catherine, as we wrap up, where can we find your book and where can we find you?
It's on Amazon. If you remember the words, the good daughter syndrome, Google that. If you resonate with it, the quiz is going to pop up. The book is going to pop up. Go from there.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that the links are available
Thank
for
you.
you, of course, in the show notes as we always do. And Catherine, I just want to thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. Again, I know initially when we were chatting, you were like, I'm not sure how much this overlaps. And then as we were talking, it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
this overlaps
This is like,
so much
yes.
that it's such an important topic that I know so many in my audience are struggling with too.
And for people in my audience, you're going to need your services. And I think they're wonderful. You're going to find so much, right, without a lawyer's fee. I mean, there's so much value to what you're offering. In addition to community, you're not the only one. All that good stuff. So I'm
Yeah,
so glad that we connected.
yeah, me
Super.
too. And I think that
Yeah.
something that I'll end with is that you are not alone, right? Like Catherine wouldn't have written a book if there was like one
Right.
person
If they're one person, that
that
took
experienced
35
this.
years of variations on a theme. I know my story, but variations on a theme, certainly.
Yeah, yeah. So you are not alone, and there are people out there that do understand and will give you that space to move at your own pace because I think that's so important. So important.
And if you look into therapy, ask the person if they've had experience with narcissistic abuse survivors. I know you're very protective of your audience, and you
Yes.
hate for somebody to land in the wrong place and
Yes.
be damaged further. Yeah,
Yes.
we're
Yep.
mama bears when it comes to that, right?
I am. Oh my
Oh,
goodness. It is so important to me. So important to me. And so, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Rising Beyond podcast.